How's everybody today? Good. Well, I was a little more encouraged today about the energy and enthusiasm that we had in practice. I think always in the spring it's a little bit inconsistent, and it seems like the longer you practice, the more inconsistent it gets. But today was a really good day. And I think that players need to understand that having the right energy and enthusiasm in practice is what helps them create the right habits, so that they can play at a high level and they're not affected by the circumstances that they're in. If it's warm outside, they have to struggle to finish and sustain. If it's windy outside, we struggle. I mean, none of those things matter in terms of what you need to focus on to be the kind of player that you're capable of being. Hopefully we'll see when we go out and play an A-Day more game-like situation for players. The format for A-Day is to create the best competition that we can. The white team will consist of the first defense and the second offense, and the crimson team will have the first offense and the second defense. So the ones will always play against the ones. It's the most competitive way that we can have the game. The twos will always compete against the twos. Most competitive way for them. And it's a steak and beans game. So the winner, and we had a draft yesterday, and we drafted some of the other players on the team, as well as all the coaches, staff, as to which team they were on. And the state gets tablecloths, flowers, waiter, everything they want, and the other guys get paper plates and one big pot of beans, and that's it. So being the commissioner, I usually can manipulate my way to whichever side of the room I like. And even though pork and beans is a favorite, these have never been my favorite. So we are really looking forward to Saturday. We hope we have a great crowd. I think our fans need to know the support of A-Day has been something that's been a tremendous asset in helping us build the program here. It's a real positive for the recruits. I think it's that they see that kind of support, energy, and enthusiasm. I think it's a real special thing for all players to see that so many people have so much interest in what they are doing that it creates a little bit of a mindset of what I'm doing is really something special. And I think that's really important to the players. I also think that because we set the standard here for how spring games sort of get evaluated, because we had so many people, and I've talked so many times about our first A-Day game here, which was now 11 games ago. The 95,000 people that were there sort of set the tone for being able to build something special, and that certainly is something that contributed to it. But because of that, now everybody tries to promote their spring game to get as big a crowd as they can, as if that's going to be something that's going to help them promote the kind of energy and enthusiasm to catapult their program forward. So like everything else that we do, we want to do it better. We don't want to stay the same. We don't want to be complacent. So we'd love to see a great crowd out there to show the support that we have for the program, our team, our players, and certainly the image that we want to portray to all the visitors that we have. The game's going to be on ESPN, so it'll be tremendous exposure for the university and the program with Kirk Herbstreit, Joey Galloway, and so we want to create a very positive A-Day atmosphere. We're excited that a lot of our former players who were great players here are coming back for A-Day. Not only guys that played for us, but guys that have had great careers here in the past and worked so hard to sort of establish the kind of tradition that we have here, which is what makes this a special place to be the coach. Some of our players that are going to be back is Dante Hightower, Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, Andre Smith, Marcel Darius, C.J. Mosley, and a lot more. So we are always excited to have some of these guys back. Some guys are starting their OTA days this week and would like to come back and can't, but we're always excited to have as many players come back. And I think it's a great indication of the kind of experience the guys had here when they were here, that they're anxious to come back and be great ambassadors for the university and the program and to support the players that are here now. Questions?
Start over with John Zener on the left.
I'm just wondering how much progress those young quarterbacks have made from practice 1 to practice 14. And is playing in front of a big crowd like this, even if they're all Alabama fans, kind of helpful?
Well, I think that first question first, I've been really pleased with the progress that all 3 of our quarterbacks have made. You know, I feel really good about these guys. It'll be interesting to see how they do when they get out there on their own tomorrow. Even though it will be limiting what we do on offense, it'll be limiting what we do on defense. But to see how they lead, how they compete, how they keep their composure, how they respond to adversity if there's any created in the game. But I've been really pleased with, you know, all of our quarterbacks, you know, this spring. And, you know, but I think that the thing I've tried to emphasize with the quarterbacks is we got to focus on execution and not trying to make plays all the time, because that's when you get in trouble. All right, just execute the play like it's supposed to be executed and believe and trust in that, and that's what's going to help us make plays rather than trying to create plays or force plays. So got to focus on the process of what you have to do to make it a positive play, and our consistency in doing that has been better and better all spring.
On the back with Cecil.
Coach, one thing we don't get to see too much of is place kickers and kickoffs. And are you comfortable with J.K. handling that in the season, if he's the best one, or how would you like to see that play out in spring?
I really think that, first of all, we recruited somebody, and I think everybody needs to get used to the fact that, you know, we didn't have a punter in the spring. J.K. became the punter and one of the best punters in the country as a freshman. We recruited a long snapper, and he was one of the best long snappers that'll probably end up playing in the NFL for some time. He did it when he was a freshman. We recruited a freshman long snapper now who's out there at mid-year. We have a kicker coming in that we really like, so he's going to be in this competition in the fall. And I can't say how that's going to work out, but we have high hopes that he'll do a good job. J.K. is very, very good at kickoffs. He has done kickoffs in the past. He is good at long field goals. And the competition there is we have a guy that is pretty accurate, that doesn't have a real strong leg, and we have a guy that has a really strong leg that can kick long field goals. So we're going to have more of a situation like we had with Jeremy Shelley in years past, where, you know, he kicked the short ones, somebody kicked the long ones. I'm comfortable with that situation. With those 2 guys. Do we need to improve that? Yeah, but I think everyone can improve at every position. But I also think the competition that's coming in may enhance, you know, that as well.
Mark.
Just want to ask about Bo Scarborough and Damian Harris. Will they be able to participate in A-Day, and what's the latest?
Look, I should have mentioned this, but Bo Scarborough could very well. He's done everything in practice. The goal for Bo was that he comes out of spring practice and he thinks he's 100% and he can do everything and he has no problem. And he took almost every rep in practice today. Are we going to let him play an A-Day? No, because we haven't banged him around a lot. There's no sense in doing that. Damian Harris has a sprained foot. He has not practiced and he will not be an A-Day. B.J. Emmons is still, he's doing some things, but he's not 100% from his foot injury that he suffered last season. All right, so he's not going to participate in the game. Sean Dion Hamilton is also not 100% from his injury that he suffered in the SEC championship game. All right, so those 4 guys are the 4 guys who will not play in the game. 3 of them are running backs, so that leaves us with 3 guys and a couple others. All right, so that's the situation that we are in from an injury standpoint.
Michael, right here in the middle.
Just want to ask, you kind of touched on it before about how you decide what plays, what kind of playbook you use, how much do you show, how much do you don't show? Does the fact that it's on TV, does that have any impact in how you do it?
No, not really. I mean, you know, my theory on it is we want to stay basic to try to get better execution with the players, especially some of the other guys, the backup players that don't have the knowledge and experience. But the second part of that is it would be very foolish to do things that are new to our offense that we would show our opponents that we play early in the season by doing them in the spring game. All right, so just basically taking those 2 theories. I've been coaching for a long time. I can't tell you who won last year's spring game. I really don't ever remember losing one. So if the goal of spring practice is to play better in the season, why would we do anything that would enhance our opponent's ability to prepare for us?
Back with Griff.
Nick, I don't think I've ever asked you this. I know what the DBs would get out of you being involved in the drills. What do you get out of that when you're doing that? A lot of head coaches obviously walk around and do everything, but you're always involved every day. What do you get out of that?
Well, look, I don't think that when I was growing up in West Virginia, that there was no diagnosis for attention deficit. You know, there was none. So I probably have it. So if I'm not doing something, I'm not busy, I'm not shaking my leg. Terry punches me in church for shaking my leg. She punches me in church because when I'm standing up, I'm rocking like this. All right, so I would say that I probably have some deficit in some way, all right, that has never been diagnosed. So it's a way that I keep myself busy. It's a way that I feel like I contribute to help the players. I've told this story many times before. Buddy Ryan was a good friend. I used to go when he was a coordinator at the Bears and I was at Michigan State. As a coordinator, I would go visit the Bears. So he became a friend. And when he became a head coach, we played him when I was in Cleveland at the Browns, when I was a defensive coordinator for Bill Belichick. And he was having a bad season, and everybody thought he was going to get fired, and it was toward the end of the season. And I went out and talked to him in pregame, and I said, buddy, what's the biggest difference between being a head coach and being an assistant? And he said, I was always somebody's best assistant. And he didn't say that in an arrogant way, all right? And he said, I was not my best assistant. So what I learned from that is, you know, he was the best defensive coordinator in the history of ball probably, and had the best defense in the NFL in the history of ball and gave up the fewest points. So if you become a head coach, why wouldn't you contribute in the area that you have the most expertise rather than let somebody else or allow somebody else to do it? That's what I took from it. So I was always a secondary coach. I was a secondary coach when there was nobody. There was 31 teams that had walk-around coordinators, and I was the only one to coach a position, and that was the DBs. So I've always liked it. I've done it everywhere I've been. I did it in Miami. I think the way ball is now, it's hard just to have one secondary coach. You need to split up a lot. We can only have a limited number of coaches. We don't have 2 secondary coaches, so for me to be somebody's GA in the secondary is probably, you know, helpful. I enjoy it with the players. I enjoy the relationships. I enjoy the relationships with all the players, but I don't root for the defense. I don't root for the DBs. I look at everything objectively from a team standpoint. I want us to do well on offense as well as defense, but I feel like I can make the best contribution to the team in that area on defense and on special teams. So that's where I've tried to spend most of my time, and I enjoy it. I like it. I don't think I think I'd be bored to death standing watching. I'm not criticizing anybody that ever stood in a tower, but I would have a hard time getting through practice that way.
Come over here to Reiner. We'll do about 3 more quickly.
Your program has recently had graduate transfers and some JUCO transfers, but it's been a long time since you guys have had an undergraduate scholarship transfer. Why is that the case?
Undergraduate scholarship transfer. We have had undergraduate scholarship transfers. Kendall Sheffield transferred last year.
He's talking coming in, coach.
Talking about what?
Come to your program.
From where?
From somewhere else, from another school. I think the last one was like Phelan Jones is what he's talking about, somebody transferring into here.
Oh, well, you know, we usually don't have any room. You know, if you got 85 guys on scholarship, that's all you can have. Last year was actually the first year for a long time. I have to look at the record book, but that we did not have 85 guys on scholarship because of the attrition that we had with some of the guys that left. And, you know, if those guys were here now, they'd probably be starting. So they left, went somewhere and sat out, or went to junior college, and now they're going someplace else, but they'd be starting here now if they'd have stayed here. So I don't understand why, but that's not my choice. It's not my decision. We only try to provide the best possible support for the players that are here when they're here and help them be successful every way that we can.
2 more quickly, Alex and then Jim.
Nick, earlier today, you talked on a radio interview about protecting Jalen a little bit last year. I was hoping you would maybe elaborate on that. And also, you talked about developing him more, trying to develop. What have y'all done this spring to carry that along and actually develop him more than you did a year ago?
Well, I think that we said that the #1 goal was to help him become a better passer. And we have spent a tremendous amount of time on that this spring. And I think he's made progress. It's just the way we practice. It's a system that we have. It's how he's coached in the system, so he has a better understanding. It's trying to do the things in a passing game that he's capable of executing. So, and I think he's made really, really good progress. I think last year the most difficult thing for a young quarterback to do is probably be a drop back passer, and so we tried to create ways, and I'm being very positive, and I was in agreement with what we did, to try to create ways that we could throw the ball, make explosive plays in the passing game without doing a whole lot of drop backing. And I think, call it what you will, but it was because he was a freshman and we didn't want to ask him to do a lot of things that he wasn't comfortable doing. So is that a bad thing? We won 14 games that way. If we'd have thrown the ball a little bit better in the last game, maybe it would have been different. But if we'd have played better defense the last 3 times they had the ball, maybe that would have been different too. So there's a lot of things that you could talk about that contributed to it. So would we do it the same way again? You know, there were times when we probably could have tried to develop that a little bit more, and maybe in game situations put him in those situations more so that it might have benefited him down the road. But that's a big assumption that anybody could make, because nobody knows if that would be true or not.
Lastly, right here.
Nick, has there been any change in Deontay Thompson's status, and will he be able to participate in A-Day?
You know, he's still cooperating with law enforcement, and we're just going to leave it that way for now. I mean, he's back here in school, and we want, first of all, excuse me, I still don't have a lot of facts surrounding this circumstance and situation and what went on. And until we find that out, I really have no intentions of taking action until I know what I'm taking action for or about. But he is back. He did cooperate, but we're just going to let him continue to take care of those issues, and we'll address it when we get more information.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you.